Good afternoon on this Sunday out of Beantown, Boston. This is Funny Like a Clown podcast. I am your host, Dennis Wirth. Episode 44, December 22nd, 2019. As always, Funny Like a Clown podcast is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. For the hot, spicy, sweet, savory taste of game time, there's only one G Vegas available at www.gvegas.webs.com. And hey, man, it's been a good week here in Beantown, Massachusetts, Gardner. We're going to be talking about a legendary comic, Joan Rivers. To do that, I have on the phone local comedian Kristy Lafleur. Kristy, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Dennis.
Thanks for being on, and you're a busy comic. I see you're all over New England. How's comedy been treating you?
Oh, it's been great. Like you said, been pretty busy. I got some shows coming up, so I'm just getting booked as much as possible. You got to keep rolling, right?
Yeah, I see you like everywhere, from like New York to Massachusetts to Connecticut. You really get around, right?
I try to. Yeah, I try to as much as I can. People have been really nice to me. Give me a lot of opportunities.
That's what it takes to make it in the business. You got to go for it, right?
Absolutely.
Well, talking about a busy comic, we're here to discuss Joan Rivers. That's who you chose, and who? Why did you choose her to discuss?
She is the epitome of what I love comedy for and what I hope we can get back to. She just goes for the throat. She goes for anybody. She doesn't care. She doesn't hold back. She never did. It's sad that she's gone. You know, she was really an icon. She was one of my favorites.
Oh, sure. I thought about it. If you did, I mean, if you talked about the Godfathers of comedy, you get the same names, Pryor and Carlin. And if you said the Godmothers of comedy, I think she'd pretty much lead the way. I could only think of a handful of female comics that would be called the Godmothers of comedy.
Yeah, she was my top. I honestly can't think of anybody else either, especially her career spanned so many decades. How can you not call her the godmother? She's top.
That's what they said. One of the biggest things was she was a survivor. She never went away, and it's tough to survive in this business. It's up and down, but it's a tough cutthroat business. You know that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Especially, I'm not going to call gender roles or anything, but it's tough for both. But, being a female and being her age, it seems like it was the impossible that she did with her career.
Oh, it's a lot easier now. I mean, female comedians are on an even par nowadays with the male. There's just as many. But back then, for a female to make it in the business, it was very difficult. I mean, she was a pioneer of what she did. But let's get into it. She was a comedian that was given her first big break in 1965 as a guest on The Tonight Show by her mentor, Johnny Carson. I mean, have you seen any of her old Tonight Show bits?
I have. I've watched so many of the, repeats even, because it was a little bit before my time with a lot of them.
Yeah, 65. That's way back there.
Yeah, a little bit before my time. I won't go there.
Right.
But she had such a long-standing relationship with him, and I didn't even realize that they had a falling out until, I did some more research into that, and it wasn't public, but as much as I thought it would be.
Well, in 1986, she was given her own show on Fox, which rivaled Johnny Carson's show. She was the first woman to ever be given a late-night talk show. It was called The Late Show with Joan Rivers. And when she called up Johnny and said, I got the show, he hung up on her and never talked to her again. Because, I think because he gave her a break and now she's competing against him, he thought it was kind of a slap in the face. Have you ever experienced something like that in comedy?
Thankfully, no. Not as of right now. I wouldn't want to, but you never know.
Yeah, I mean, I took a comedy class, and I love the teacher. He helped me so much. I wouldn't even be doing comedy, wouldn't be half as far as I am if I didn't have him. But it got to the point where he was only going to look at me as his student. He never put me on an even par. So it was like I had to get away from him to be accepted as It's like, he'd call in all the big-name comics. No, you're just my student. I never give you the credit you've earned. If anybody pulled off half of what I'd done in comedy, he'd have the utmost respect for him, but not me, because I was just his student. That was tough, because I love the guy for giving me my break, but I mean, if I was ever going to get the respect in comedy I deserved, I had to go elsewhere, because I was always going to be a student.
Yeah, like you said, you do what you got to do in this business. You have to kind of be your own promotion. You got to be your own personality. You got to do what you have to do to survive in the business. It's tough.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in this business, they want to see you do good, but never better than them, It's like, I don't want you to do better than them.
I don't think I know any of those people, luckily, but, like I said, you never know.
The higher you get, trust me, it's coming, okay? But, I don't know, I kind of attribute it to like when you're 18 years old and you want to move out of your parents' house. Your parents want you to stay there and be their kid forever. They don't realize it's time for you to be an adult and, go out on your own and do your own thing. That's kind of what I attribute to. And I think that was that was what Joan Rivers, did. It's time for me, to be the big star, take the next step. But Johnny wanted her, to be his sidekick forever, and it's tough, tough to have a lot of friends and do what you love to do in this business.
Yeah, it is. It really is. I agree with you, Dennis. It's tough to make friends and keep friends and stay in touch, and at the same time, like you said, try to go your own way as much as you can while still keeping that relationship. It's not an easy thing to do. It's not.
So after that, she had a good run, a few-year run on doing nighttime television. Then she did daytime TV for a while, the Joan Rivers Show from '89 to '93. And daytime television is a lot different than nighttime because you got to be crystal clean. Where nighttime you can be a little bit edgy. It's still TV, not ridiculous. But like The Voice, I know Whoopi Goldberg, she's making a name for herself on The Voice as daytime TV. But what are some of your favorite daytime shows? You got any or?
As of right, currently my favorite daytime shows?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't get to watch TV too often. I can't say that I have any.
Yeah, TV's on its way out, yeah. That's why we're doing podcasts, because that's the new wave. TV's on the way out and they're on the way in, right?
Yep, yeah, but, I think so. That's what it's looking like.
But, I mean, she won an Emmy for her daytime talk show, so, I mean, she was definitely the best of what she did. In the mid-'90s, I mean, this is more getting into what we remember her for. She became known for doing her red carpet interviews with celebrities. If that's more. Do you remember the celebrity interviews she did on the red carpet?
The Fashion Police, I believe, right?
That was one with her and her daughter. Yep. And
Yep. I watched that pretty often. I remember that show.
But I mean, for our generation, the younger people, that's more what we remember her for. Like 1965, we weren't watching the Tonight Show. I mean, that was more. Then once we saw her on there, we went back and watched that. But I mean, that was our generation's exposure to her. In 2009, she was on Celebrity Apprentice and won the whole thing. Did you watch that?
I only watched bits and pieces of it at the time. I had seen episodes before that of different seasons, and that one I didn't catch too many of. But what I didn't catch, I heard a lot about it.
Yeah, I remember she was on with her daughter, and her daughter, she got taken out early. Well, Joan went on to win the thing, and it was some claw scratching, and that show was pretty dirty, where the people did what they did to win, but. Welcome to comedy.
The episodes that I saw from seasons past, that was pretty much what the base of it was. It was just like throat clawing.
Welcome to comedy. It's Kill or Be Killed. Let's see. She hosted on the E! Channel, as you said, the Fashion Police from 2010 to 2014. She starred from 2011 to 2014. Joan Knows Best with her daughter, Melissa Rivers. That was when they did it together. 2010, they did a documentary about Joan Rivers, A Piece of Work. Did you see a documentary about her or no?
I did not see that documentary, unfortunately. I'm gonna have to watch it though.
Yeah, I didn't know about it myself. I mean, I think I've seen a couple documentaries about it. I don't remember the name, so maybe I have seen it. I just don't remember that was the name of it. But she had just such a long career. I mean, I'm gonna hit the high points of her careers, but I mean, we'd be here all day talking about this woman's career. She did so much in the business.
Oh yeah, decades.
Now here's a genius move right here. She went on the QVC channel where you can buy stuff off the channel, and she marketed a line of jewelry on that channel. Which,
I believe I remember some of that.
You remember that? And well, George Lucas from Star Wars, he said, those Star Wars movies made so much to make, and it made him rich. But he said he made his fortune off the action figures. That was where the big money was in. It wasn't in making the movies. He made his fortune off the action figures. So if you can market a product, I mean, that's pretty. I remember Evel Knievel. He even said that Kenner made the little toy motorcycle about him that you wound up. He said that was how he got rich, not from doing his stunts. It was off the toy they made about him. So.
I'm not surprised, yeah. You got to market yourself any way you can. Once you go big, you have to do everything you can to make that money.
Any way to make money and keep surviving, and she was a survivor. Let's see, she had 12 best-selling books, which, I mean, if you have one best-selling book, I'd have 12. I mean, how long did that run? Have you ever read any of her books, or?
I have not,
I'm not a big reader myself.
I knew she was an author, though. I knew she was an author. Unfortunately, I haven't read one of them yet.
This one's surprising. I mean, she only had 3 comedy albums, which, I mean, that's a lot, but considering for the time, she didn't do a lot. In 1984, she was nominated for a Grammy for her album, What Becomes a Semi-Legend the Most. So she was nominated for a Grammy for that one. 1994, she was nominated for a Tony Award for her performance in a play. She played Sally Marr in a play. And do you know who Sally Marr is?
I do not know.
That was Lenny Bruce's mom, okay? So, and she said Lenny Bruce was her major influence in comedy for doing it. So, she played her hero's mom in a play on off-Broadway. And she was nominated for a Tony for that. So, Sam Kinnison's the reason I got into comedy. I did a short film about him on YouTube, and that was the time of my life getting to play your hero. So, that's why I do the always fun to talk about your heroes, right?
Of course. I actually saw your movie. Good job, by the way.
Well,
I saw it a couple times.
Thank you.
You're
Let's
welcome.
see. 1968, the New York Times billed her as the most influential, funny woman alive. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, 100%.
All right. So, yeah, I mean, in the world of comedy, I'd say she'd have to be at the top. I mean, one of the top of the legends anyway. Rolling Stone had her as the 6th best comedian of all time in their top 50. Would you agree with that?
I would say top 6, yeah, definitely. She's up there.
She's in the
depending on who she's going against.
You'd put her in with the Pryors and the Carlins and the Rodney Dangerfields and all them?
Absolutely, yep. They were all legends in my eyes too. But for a female, if I have to say female for the time, she's my #1 female.
Sure, for what she did in the time, I mean, man, that was something.
Phenomenal.
She survived in a guy's world, and boy, she did it with spunk.
Especially with her husband's suicide, raising her daughter being in college. Like, she went through so much. It brings tears to your eyes when you think about how far she's come.
Right. I mean do you find a lot of comics use, comedy, laughter to deal with their pain like that?
Yes.
I do too. It's a very good release for pain. If you got something painful, you got to find the humor in it, otherwise it'll drive you crazy. So.
And other people laugh at that, and that makes you feel better because you're helping someone else, so you're healing yourself. That's how I see it personally. I don't know how other comedians see it. I can't speak for everybody, but
yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's a personal thing. In high school, she was vice president of the drama club, and when she lived in New York, she actually worked as a tour guide at the Rockefeller Center. So, I mean, that was how she got introduced to the comedy. How did you get introduced to comedy? What started you in the business?
From a dare from a friend who was actually doing a lot of open mics locally at the time when I started about almost 4 years ago.
So somebody dared you to do it, and you've been hooked ever since?
Yep, dared me to do it, and I got fortunate getting, more open mics and meeting new comedians and people booking me on shows like once in a great while, and I just kept writing.
Sure. Well, I thought that was interesting, being a tour guide at the Rockefeller Center, because I know a lot of Boston comedians, they do the duck tours, and, they're entertaining while they're giving the tours, they're trying to make jokes about touring Boston, and that's a great way to keep active, in between gigs.
Yeah, it's the best audience.
Sure, live audience.
Yep.
1960, she co-starred in a play on off-Broadway with Barbara Streisand called Driftwood. Now, I don't imagine you've seen that. It's before my time, but...
I've never heard of it.
No, yeah, I mean...
Never heard of it.
Well, you're going back 1960, so that was like way before our time. She worked Greenwich Village comedy clubs, and she became friends with Woody Allen and George Carlin there. Who's your gang of comics you like to hang out? Who do you run with?
I meet so many comedians. I don't socialize with like a particular group. I mean, there's so many. I could sit here all day and name them all.
Okay, but you don't have like a couple friends if you got to do like a bringer show that you bring those to and then they do it for you or something like that, or
none at all.
Right,
no.
so you just meet anybody and everybody and you're friends with everybody, and that's a good way to be.
I try my best. Yeah. It's a good name for me. That I like to get along with everybody. I don't like the bad blood. I couldn't do it.
No, I was saying now, like Dane Cook, he was a Boston comedian, and we play a lot of the same stages that he played, before he was somebody in the world. But I mean, what would you think if one of the people you're working with now really went on to hit it big time?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's got to make it. Nobody thought Dane Cook could barely be anything until he was. So who knows? I mean. A lot of the guys
it would inspire me to do better, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It definitely would inspire me. Seeing
Just
someone I know making it.
I used to work with them when they were a nobody, man, back in the day in Boston.
I knew them when. No, it'd be awesome because it's possible.
So let's see. She went on to be a writer for Candid Camera. Do you remember the show Candid Camera?
I do.
That was one of my parents' favorite shows.
Many times.
She was a writer for that. She was on the Ed Sullivan Show, which, I mean, before Johnny Carson, if you were a big name, that was the show you went on, was Ed Sullivan.
Yep, I caught some of her performances on Ed Sullivan, actually, yeah.
Did you? Yeah. I mean,
did.
Were they dated for the time, or could you still watch them today and get laughs?
They were very dated, obviously, because it was so long ago. But she had that persona that she kept throughout her entire career also, where she was biting a little bit. But I think at the beginning of her career, like any of us comedians, we have to test the waters. And she was going only so far, but she knew where she could go.
Yeah.
Like men and women movement, it was like the women's lib movement, and she had these jokes that we can still understand at this time.
Right.
But a lot of the domesticated things that they would talk about, like Cosmopolitan and things like that, the magazine back in the day and how it was towards women, a lot different than now. So we might not catch some of the things that go over our head when it comes to that.
Right, that's understandable, sure. Well, here's another one. I mean, we're talking about female icons. She was a guest on the Carol Burnett show, which I guess if you were going to do like a Mount Rushmore of female comics, I mean, Carol Burnett would have to be right in there with Joan Rivers, wouldn't you say?
I would say so, yeah. In a different, not league, but in a different way in my mind. You know, as far as like, I consider Joan Rivers more like a live audience stand-up as opposed to Carol Burnett. She like took over the TV world.
TV thing, right?
To me, that's how I see it.
So now I tried to think like you. I mean, back in the day, it was a guy's world. There were few women. I mean, that broke the pioneer. I tried to put who was my personal female Mount Rushmore of comics. I put on Joan Rivers, obviously, Goldie Hawn, Carol Burnett, Lucille Ball, and Mary Tyler Moore. I mean, would you have any more you'd want to add to that list, or?
You know, back at that time, I watched a lot more male comedians. Joan Rivers was the only one that really stood out to me that I got more familiar with than any of the others. Like I would watch reruns of like say Carol Burnett. Goldie Hawn, I watched more of her movies. I mean as a comedic actress, yes, but she spanned so many different ranges. As far as comedy, Joan Rivers stood out to me more than the other ladies. But like I said, in their own way, they were all legends to me.
But I got to those five and I was stumped after that. I mean, could you think of another one after that? It was kind of like, that's it.
I honestly, I can't. And, you know, I guess it's kind of sad in a way, but like you said, for the time, these women still broke out, and at least they did that, even though there wasn't a lot of them. They made the mark for women like me to even do open mics or, you know, little shows or stand-up comedy in general.
So who are some of your favorite female comics now? I mean, you can go Amy Schumer, Whitney Cummings, Sarah Silverman. I mean, you could go down the list now. Do you have a favorite now?
I would say my number one is Whitney Cummings. She has that bite to her where, you know, Amy Schumer was my top favorite for a long time, and I still love her comedy. I just haven't seen a lot of things recently by her, so I would say my second favorite, Sarah Silverman. She's amazing, but I wouldn't post her in my top five just because, you know, the comedy that I like is different, in my opinion, than what other people would like. So it's not that I don't respect and love her comedy. She's amazing. I'm trying to think of other females that Wanda Sykes, actually. I wouldn't say in the time of Joan Rivers, but more recently, Wanda Sykes, I've always loved her comedy as well.
She had her own talk show for a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't... Unfortunately, there's not enough female comedians with those stand-up specials that I can familiarize myself with still.
Well, I thought Amy Schumer was a genius. I mean, she got her own movie, and she was so smart to know, I never done a movie. I need somebody to make me look good. She had Goldie Hawn in the movie with her. Trainwreck was the one I saw with her, and then Goldie Hawn. I'm trying to think of the name. I saw that as well. That was a great movie. I don't remember, but I thought that was a genius move to get a veteran actor like that in there with her, you know, where...
Yeah,
you know,
she's definitely somebody special, that's for sure. I mean,
someday some young female comic's going to want Amy Schumer in their movie, and she's going to be the veteran, but I mean, she knew enough to do it. But, all right, let's go on. She was on Hollywood Squares. You remember that show?
I do, yep. I grew up watching that also.
This one, I mean, she hosted 9 Saturday Night Lives. Do you believe that?
I did not know that fact.
I mean, wow, I thought maybe 3 or 4, but 9 was like, bam.
It's phenomenal.
What did you just watch last night? Eddie Murphy just hosted for the first time.
I was just going to ask you that. I was at a show in Bethlehem, Connecticut, which is almost 3 hours away from me. So I got back at right at the end of the show, and I only got to see one of his skits. I was so disappointed, but I had a blast last night, so it was worth it.
It was worth it.
I really wanted to catch it.
You can catch the reruns. I didn't catch it either. I fell asleep in my chair, so I'll have to catch the rerun myself. I got sleep apnea. I fall asleep everywhere. Let's see.
Gosh.
All right, in 2014, now we mentioned how she had her falling out with Johnny Carson, but in 2014, she made her first return to The Tonight Show, since 1965 to 2014, where Jimmy Fallon had her back on. Did you happen to see that one with Jimmy Fallon or no?
I may have. I don't recall, at that time if I had seen it or not.
I thought 100%. Jimmy Fallon, he's really doing, I mean, what do you think of him as a talk show host? Would you put him in there with the big guns?
No.
Oh, okay. I think he's being
No.
daring because he had on Andrew Dice Clay. And back when Andrew Dice Clay was a short time, but he was the #1 comic on the planet, and none of the late night shows would have him on because he did the dirty material. And Jimmy Fallon, he had him on. He was daring enough to put him on. So, and he's had Lenny Clark on a couple times. You know, he's a local Boston legend, Lenny Clark. So.
Yes, yeah, I've heard of him. I unfortunately haven't seen him live yet. I'd love to someday, hopefully.
Yeah, he's a great guy. I've worked with him. He's absolutely wonderful to have on. Now, here's one of my favorites of all time. I don't know if you've seen it. In 1987, she was in the movie Spaceballs. Did you happen to see that?
One of my favorite movies.
That was like a cult classic, okay? I mean, what do you remember about her role in the movie the most?
I don't remember too much of her role. I remember not Martin Short? I'm sorry, now I'm getting like that old lame brain. Oh my gosh, I'm thinking of all the characters. John Candy, I remember his character. Joan Rivers, I remember seeing her in the movie, but I don't remember too much about the role she played.
Yeah, she was like the C-3PO, you know, spinoff. They did a spinoff of Star Wars. She was playing like the C-3PO spinoff of him, but that movie definitely wanted to become a cult classic for sure. Spaceballs.
It did. Yep.
Then she was on I mean, you're not in the kid shows probably. Pee-wee's Playhouse. Do you remember that?
I do. Yes, I do. Yep.
That was the kid show. She made an appearance on there. Let's see. As we mentioned, she was influenced by Lenny Bruce, and I guess, you know, if we ask people who are the godfathers of comedy, we get the same answers, the Carlins and the Pryors. But if you asked our parents, you know, they'd have a whole different answer. They'd say, you know, like the Groucho Marx and, you know, the people of their time, right? Charlie Chaplin way back. But I thought this was, she said Lenny Bruce influenced the most, but for female comics, Phyllis Diller, she said, was one of her big influences. Do you remember Phyllis Diller at all?
I do remember my mom was a fan of Phyllis Diller's. But growing up, I don't believe I ever watched anything of hers.
I remember she was on the Scooby-Doo show. When I was a kid, I watched cartoons, the Scooby-Doo, and she was like one of the cartoons. They had Phyllis Diller on. I mean, so I knew her name, and I knew she was a comedian, but I guess for the time, I mean, she was the original female who did it, and, you know, the ones that we mentioned did it after her, so
wow,
hats off to Phyllis Diller. She paved the way, right? Let's see. All right, here's one for you. 2003, she left network TV to go to the TV Guide channels to do interviews there for $6.8 million for 3 years to do red carpet interviews. Can you imagine how much money she must have in the bank if they're paying her just for that? I mean, between that and the QVC. I
can only imagine. I know she'd gone bankrupt for a time, right? With the fallout of her late night show, she went bankrupt and.
Yeah. Well, it's a different kind of bankrupt, you know. They file bankruptcy to hold their assets, where, you know, if you don't have any assets, you file bankruptcy to get out of debt. So it's a different kind of. If you're rich, it's a different kind of bankruptcy than we know. I know.
I wish I knew.
Yeah, I know. Well, Wayne Newton said one time he filed bankruptcy because he had so many people suing him, he didn't even know who the people were. So he said he went to the banks and he said, I'm going to pay you my loans, but I got to file bankruptcy because so many people are suing me and I don't even know who the people are. So that was why he did it. So it's a different level, but
yeah.
Let's see. She did guest spots on Curb Your Enthusiasm. Do you remember that show?
I watched like maybe 2 episodes of it. I know I'm familiar with Larry David a bit, but it was not my speed, I guess I can say. Not
I didn't see it. I've heard of the show, but I've never seen it. Boston Legal she was on. Do you remember that one?
I remember the show.
That was with William Shatner, yeah, from Star Trek. Nip Tuck. Do you remember that one?
Yes. I think I saw 1 episode of that show, and I was like, I don't know if I can watch this.
Well, that was about plastic surgery, and I mean, she had so money, it was obvious to put her on the show, you know, where, I mean, show about...
Yeah, that's what I would think, right? They might as well. I mean, that poor lady, I don't even know if I could find a count of how many surgeries she had had. I tried, I think, to look it up, and I couldn't find anything concrete.
Right. She was on The Simpsons. Do you remember on The Simpsons episode?
I do, yep. I was a big Simpsons fan also.
What did she play on The Simpsons? I never got into the cartoons, but what did she play herself or
She played herself, yeah,
oh, okay.
yeah. The details of the show, my God, I don't remember what year it was, but she played herself, and it was just a regular.
They've had so many comics on. Every podcast I do, I see The Simpsons, man. They're so good about taking care of comedians. I love that. She was on an episode of Louie. Did you watch Louie?
No, I didn't.
Okay, she was on an episode of that. Louis C.K., another Boston guy. Hot in Cleveland, she was on there. You know, I watched Hot in Cleveland a lot.
What's the that show? I haven't seen it, though.
I don't remember the episode with her. I thought I had seen
I'm
every
sorry?
episode, and I guess I didn't because I don't remember her being on. But
I gotta keep watching it. Then there's a lot of repeats on. I love watching the
I
repeats. So
guess
hopefully
so.
I'll catch that one.
All right, in 2009, she had her own Comedy Central roast. Did you watch the roast?
No.
I remember the roast. I remember Greg Giraldo. She was just going, what gets into you people? You had so many surgeries. He's like, you used to look your age, now you don't even look your species. I mean, that was the joke I remember from it. Was perfect, but
Oh, they must have had a ball with her though at the time. I can
well,
imagine.
you know, her face was so stretched out. She was trying to laugh, but you couldn't tell because her face didn't move because there was nothing to move. So
Yeah.
she's laughing, but her
Yeah.
face wasn't moving. It was weird, but
I think her daughter followed in her footsteps, Melissa. They ended up looking like twins, unfortunately, you know, the time she passed. But I think they got similar surgeries, to be honest. That's what it looks like. Not that it's a bad thing. I mean, that's what they wanted to do,
yeah.
but
So let's see, in 2014, she did the MTV Movie Awards, which would be her last performance before her death. Now, MTV was the biggest thing, but I mean, in my day, but it's not anymore. Did you happen to see the MTV Movie Awards or no?
no, I can't recall, honestly.
Yeah, I
No.
used to like them when they actually played music videos. Now it's like it's a music channel that plays no music. I don't get it, but
Yeah, I stopped paying attention to MTV a long time ago, like you said, because of that.
yeah, it's a shell of what it was. But her death was caused from breathing complications from minor throat surgery, and she made the joke, "I've had so many plastic surgeries. When I die, they'll have to donate my body to Tupperware." But what do you remember about her death?
I remember at the time being like, I mean, she was older, yes, and obviously that's not saying that she lived a good life and it wasn't tragic. It was just that she was, I believe, 81, and I initially thought it was plastic surgery. I think there was a rumor going around that it was plastic surgery, and then come to find out a short time later, you know, it was that minor procedure. She was having a lot of throat issues, and then a while after that, it came out that it was actually her daughter, Melissa, had filed a malpractice lawsuit.
Right.
There was a lot of sketchy things that had happened.
2015, her daughter Melissa filed a malpractice suit. They settled out of court for an undisclosed amount, and doctors had to accept responsibility for her death. So I guess from what I read, that her vital signs started to drop, and when that happened, they should have reacted, and they didn't, and that was the cause of her death.
They didn't pay attention, I guess, to the fact that her oxygen and her blood pressure was so low that she was in distress.
Right.
Until it was 100% obvious that she was in complete distress, and they need to give her CPR. They revived her, and then she stayed in Mount Sinai for like a week, and then unfortunately passed away. And it was just all the details about that, even the stuff that came out from the malpractice lawsuit, are still sketchy. There's still things that I think that they're.
I thought she died right away. I didn't know she was. So it was a week before she passed away.
Yeah.
Really? Oh, I did not know. Wow.
She was in Mount Sinai for a week. They had revived her. She was in cardiac arrest, and it was just. I think it was unnecessary that she passed away that way. I know that.
We lost a legend and didn't have to, but. All right, Kristy. We're getting toward the end of the episode here. We end off every episode with trivia. I'm going to ask you 3 Joan Rivers questions, and I'll preface this by saying nobody does good on trivia. Most people go 0 for 3. Nobody's ever gone 3 for 3 ever in the history of Funny Like Clown podcast. Some people have gotten 2 right. Most go 1 or 0, but it's informative, so let's try it anyway. You ready?
Perfect. Let's do this.
All right. What did Joan Rivers attribute her many plastic surgeries to? Why did she have so many plastic surgeries?
Her mother?
No, she actually said, and I found this one, as a child, she was an overweight child, which led to low self-esteem. And that she always had low self-esteem about her body image, and that was why she had so many plastic surgeries. Which, if you see younger pictures of her, she looks like a model. I mean,
I thought she was beautiful.
Yeah, to believe she was an overweight kid, but yeah, I mean, I've struggled with weight. I know, man. You get people who pick on you, that'll stick with you for your whole life. So I can see having low self-esteem and getting surgeries to try to make yourself feel better. But
yeah.
All right, here's the second one. Joan Rivers is actually her stage name. Do you know what her real birth name is?
Oh, I did.
Tip of your tongue. Tell somebody asked you, right?
I can't think of it.
Take a guess.
Oh gosh. Oh my God. I did come across it, and I can't think of it.
It is Joan Malinsky.
Yes, that's it.
Joan Malinsky, better known as Joan Rivers. All right, we'll give you your last one. And who gave the eulogy at her funeral?
It wasn't Melissa.
Nope.
Oh no, I don't know. I really don't.
Howard Stern was given the honor. And,
Oh, bugger.
he said she was really, bold in the comedy world and very nice in the private world. She was a sweet girl. On stage she was bold, but she was a real sweet person in real life. All right, Kristy, I want to thank you for being on Funny Like a Cloud podcast. Before we go, I'm going to give you the stage here. You being a big fan of Joan Rivers, what would you want other people to know about her?
Oh my God, she took chances where a lot of us would have cowered and given up, and that's what I admire most about her. I mean, that's the biggest thing I take away from her entire life and career is she didn't put up with anybody's BS. That's what I admire most. I think that everybody should know. She was a fighter.
Yeah, this if you're gonna do comedy, it's gonna kick you down, man. And if you stay down,
Yep.
you're gonna get beat. You got to get back up, dust yourself off, and keep going forward. So
Absolutely.
just like Funny Like a Clown podcast, we're gonna keep going. Thank you for being on. I wish you well in the comedy world, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Dennis. You also. You have a great day.
Thanks for being on. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, comedian Kristy Lafleur talking about legendary icon Joan Rivers. And, hey, if you did a Mount Rushmore of female comedians, she'd be on the first spot, okay? I mean, there'd be a few after her. We talked about the legends, but, man, she survived just decade after decade. She never went away. She always stayed in the mainstream, and hats off to her. I can only hope to scratch the surface of the comedy career she had. But I'm having fun, man. Funny Like Clown podcast. Brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. Until next time, keep laughing because laughter is the best medicine. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.